All right, everybody. This is Ibarionex from the Candid Frame, and you wouldn't imagine the kind of stuff we went through just to get recording on this thing. Spent I felt like a half a day trying to resolve this issue here. Let me look into the lens. Still not getting used to this thing. Anyway, as usual, we're going to sit down and talk about some pictures. And today we're going to be doing it with my friend Jason, also known as Stockezy, on Instagram, who is not in downtown New York City. He's upstate, just
Upstate.
chilling.
Yeah, I removed myself and quarantined in the woods. Unfortunately, I live in a very busy part of the town, Manhattan. I'm in Chinatown. I'm separated in two, Manhattan and like around 20th Street in an area called Stuytown. Blocks and blocks and blocks of people. So I decided why not take a little vacation in the woods.
Yeah, he's a very talented street photographer. I came to know him from his YouTube channel, but also from another YouTube channel from Sam Lintaro, who you saw a couple of weeks ago when Sam joined me for a critique session. And so there's this little network of photographers all over the world that YouTube is sort of bringing together. So at some point, I hope to get together in the real world and
Yeah,
hang out and shoot someday soon. Be nice.
that'd be great. I mean, this is also amazing. The network just keeps on growing and growing, and Sam's really good at connecting people too. He's been doing that. We had another live stream just the other day with Sean Tucker, and he always finds people that are like growing their Instagrams and YouTube following, and
Yeah.
manages to give them a nice platform. So, and as well, you have been doing it for ages now with over 500 and something episodes of the Candid Frame,
Yeah,
which
man. I should have a very long gray beard by now.
you
But
think we'd be experts at this stuff, setting up some video chats and audio.
yeah, I need like a middle school kid who comes by here, who just comes here, looks at me with this very disgusting look, and then flips the switch and walks out, and I pay him like $50.
Wow, that's so funny. I was just saying that like the day before yesterday to my girlfriend. I'm like, I need a tech friend. Like, I have all the gadgets in the world, but I can't not put a command prompt into my Windows computer. And I'm like, I need that guy that just understands the inside of computers.
Yeah.
Yeah, so
Well, let's just jump into talking about the pictures, which is what I usually do here. And so the idea is I choose 3 pictures from the Flickr poll, and we just have a discussion. And usually I just do it just by myself, but this time me and Jason are going to sort of riff over the images. And I say it so many times that what I'm really kind of looking for is just an image that makes me stop to just arrest my attention. So that's kind of why I've chose the 3 images that we're talking about today. But I'd like to see what Jason thinks about it, and let's just jump into it. So let me just share my screen. And can you see that image?
oh, yes, I can.
Okay, I picked
Nice
this
and clear.
image in your honor because I know you're a New Yorker.
My home. What a tease.
So I know people have mixed feelings about the subways in New York, but it's always been a fascinating place um, for photography. I mean, going on for ages. Um, but it's also probably one of the more difficult places to photograph. I chose this image for my own reasons, but I'm just to lead off. Tell me what you think, especially from the perspective you come from, having lived in New York.
Yeah, I mean, Subway has always been kind of difficult for me. I I think I've always felt like Subway is something that I would graduate to. Shooting in such a tight space, there's no escape. You know what I
Mhm.
mean? If somebody catches you, nowhere to go. And one of the first books that ever got me into street photography was actually Bruce Davidson's Subway series, which to me is still one of the most incredible capsules in New York City from the 1980s that it has existed. And looking at this image, what's interesting about this at first is the lighting here. I don't know if you notice this person's hand on the right, but it seems like they're standing there, and you would think that this person in the foreground would be in the shadow,
Yeah.
um, which immediately gives this image this kind of like pop art kind of effect where there are different layers to it, and they're very pronounced. I also really enjoy the emotion between these two, this exchange. And it's kind of, I can't really tell if his eyes are closed and he's enjoying this moment or if he's looking at his phone and not enjoying this moment.
No, his eyes are closed.
Okay, gotcha. It's giving me the preview in a little bit smaller of a window, but I was like, is he
Oh,
holding
okay.
his phone? I was like, this is such a New York City attitude to see a dude who's strong and some girls kissing on him and he's just kind of about his business, you know? So, I mean, immediately this definitely grabs my attention because it has that vibe to it. It has that New York energy, just young kids in love, kind of not really paying attention to what's going on around them, especially in a crowded environment.
And I forgot to mention at the beginning that this is shot by Bjane Levine. I have no XF data on this one. Yeah, I think moments of tenderness in public is something that I'm always eyeing for, and it's also one of the most difficult things to capture as a street photographer. It happens all the time, but the thing is, one, the moments are often really fleeting, so you have to be really quick to react to it, and you also have to get past your own fear of making the photograph because you feel like, oh, if you're intruding and they're going to get pissed off and so on and so forth. So there have been many a times where I've let an image like this pass me by, but when I do make the shot, it's always a shot I'm always glad that I made. um, the gesture
Mm-hmm.
here is just so strong because you can get the feeling that they're both into each other and they're probably both very exhausted. um, and
Mm,
it's the hands here do everything. I mean, he has, as much as the gesture of her leaning into his neck is strong, but it's the way he gently touches her neck, and then the way her right hand grasps his jacket sleeve.
mm-hmm.
It's just, there's just this strong intimacy there that I just really love, and I like the presence of the other hands in the frame because you got the one on the right that's clenched, you got the one below it that's just kind of laying in that woman's lap. You got that person on the far left on the phone, and the right hand grasping the bag, and all those other hand gestures are fairly neutral. But
Mm-hmm.
the hands in for the couple here, they're so expressive. So for me, it's not just the fact that there's such physical proximity and that their faces are so close. For me, it's so much about what the hands are. And like you said, the light is really nice. And the subway cars, man, are like completely unpredictable. You know.
Yeah, yeah. I'd have to agree with that. Thinking about it now, the way that you're saying, and that all the faces are completely taken, they're not in this image. It's really great composition to leave those out because it would have actually been distracting, but the hands tend to force you towards the middle of this image,
Hmm.
and then you focus on something that I like the way you put that. All the other hands are kind of neutral, but their hands are very busy and connected with each other.
And one other thing that happens is everyone else is wearing black.
Mm, that's
And,
interesting as well. Almost creates a natural vignette on the edges of the frame.
hmm. Yeah. Does it bother you at all that the far left hand is cut off?
My eye keeps getting drawn to that section, and it might just be because that bag is also a very bright spot,
Hmm.
considering that everything that they're wearing is black all the way down to the pants. And my eye does continue to get pulled to that it's like a green or almost like you might as well just
Yeah.
call it a white bag there, because it does suck your eye into it.
I
Mm,
think you could probably darken that just a little bit without becoming too distracting that
mm,
you've been manipulating it. Um, you
definitely.
know, this, I think that the image maybe could work as a black and white, but I think this is one of those pictures that could work equally well as a black and white and as in color. But because the color is so effective here, I kind of hesitate recommending going to black and white because those, the black outfits of everyone else in the shot is,
Mhm.
such a nice contrast to what's happening in the middle.
Definitely, but these, I forget, but I think now that you say that, the black and white would be nice because that tan and the green that they're wearing would render a little bit different from those black outfits, right? So they would
Hmm.
have that little bit of pop, and then the color in the bottom left half wouldn't be so distracting.
So when you shoot down the subway, because when I was there last time, I think I was shooting fairly wide open, like a 3200 or something like that, just to get a reasonable shutter speed, and I would only shoot like not when the train was moving, but when it like stopped right before it, it started
Yeah,
going again. Because just
that's mhm.
that was just one of the tricks that in order to get a reasonably sharp photograph.
Or you shoot outside the window while people stop everybody. That's like, I mean, it's a photo that we see pretty often where someone's kind of a little bit tired and they're resting their head against the window, waiting for the train doors to close and keep
Yeah.
going to their stop. That's a nice spot to pick people off. But, I've never really made it a point to live down in the subway, kind of like a day of shooting in the subway. My style of shooting has always been putting miles above ground as opposed to downstairs, because like you said, the lighting is never as ideal, and the reality is you have to be fast. So when you're shooting at about 3200 or something like that, you might only get what 125th of a second,
Yeah.
and you
Hmm.
got to have that fast lens with you. So if you're sneaking shots, you're gonna get a lot of fails.
Cool. All right, let's go to the next one. Okay, this is by Andreas Neophytou. Sorry if I'm butchering the name. This was shot with a Sony A7 at 1/500th of a second, f11, ISO 1250. Now, juxtapositions is always something. Juxtapositions are always something that really is sort of important to me, and um, this has some those elements of a sort of a cliche where you have a really colorful wall and backdrop, and then you wait for somebody to walk in front of it. But I think what elevates the shot for me is is the presence of the cat on the right edge of the frame, but more importantly, the shadow on the bottom middle.
Mm-hmm.
Because there
Mm-hmm.
we get, I'm assuming, is the head of the person who is walking right in front of us. So this seems to be a very short wall, and the sun seems to be above them, casting that shadow. Because you can see just barely the shadow of the cat here. So the sun is coming from here, casting the shadow down here. So it's really sort of an interesting shot in because it's making a bunch of choices that breaks a whole lot of rules, but that for me works. The fact that you're cutting off numerous subjects and that you have um, the, just um, the juxtaposition of all these elements in here, but that somehow are are working really well. I mean, you got the texture of the wall, you got the pattern of the walkway, but for me, it's that shadow that makes the shot. If that shadow wasn't there, I don't know whether I would like the image as much as I like it with it.
Well, it almost acts as an anchor, right? If the shadow wasn't there, it would constantly feel like the cat was running away with the image, in a
Yeah,
sense.
very true. Yeah.
Because I'm imagining it not being there. My eyes do constantly pull to the cat on the right. But what I do like is this gate above the subject, which is starting off the bottom quarter of this image with some leading lines that are repeated in the cement that
Hmm.
lead you to the blue wall. Kind of, it's this recycle where your eyes get pulled in all the way to the blue wall and then they reset back down to the bag and the cat, and then you just keep going back through. It's a weird cycle that it creates that's kind of very pleasing to look at, I'd say.
Yeah, and you can see here, I guess there is some sort of gate because you can see these lines here.
Uh,
So I guess there's some sort of
mhm.
gate metal structure just above um, this blue wall because you can see these lines, which helps break this up so it's not just this expanse of of highlight, right? And just
Mhm.
the gesture of the cat's foot just above it mimics what's happening here. So if anything, I would have liked for this to get opened up just a little bit because there's a
Bit
mirroring that's happening
inspiration.
between the two. It's really hard. You
Mhm.
lose a lot of detail there to shadow, and I think that could have been opened up just slightly. Um,
Yeah, maybe just a couple more shots walking with them might have done it, but who knows how fast this cat was walking. That's one of the first things that crossed my mind is I wish there was a little more limb separation here. And
yeah,
I don't know how much you could have worked this moment any bit more, but immediately my mind's thinking about what if the cat's tail was up, you know, all those things. But you can only hope and pray.
how, in your opinion, do you think this was a reaction shot, or do you think the photographer actually saw the potential of the scene to play out and made a conscious choice to include these elements in here?
Well, I'm I'm assuming that from the angle of that back wall, the fact that things aren't kind of completely lined up and straightened, that this was more of a reaction shot.
Hmm.
Um, I mean, this is one of those things that you kind of just snap and you hope it works.
Yeah.
You know, you're just walking by and you drop the camera real quick and you fire. You don't really fully aim, and then you look at it later and you're like, "Oh, that kind of works."
Hmm.
But I mean, if you set up for this moment, maybe they saw the blue wall and they held on for this moment. Because I probably would have stopped at this blue wall too, hoping that someone would come by. And then you see a lady stop with a blue bag, and you're just like, your spidey senses start tingling.
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
Yeah. Yeah. What
Yeah,
do you think?
yeah, it's like 50-50 for me. Part of me can see this as a reaction, but I'm hoping that they recognized, maybe the blue wall and the shadow being cast on the ground, and they got into position, waiting for someone to come in, and then the cat was sort of the added bonus. And the cat
Mm.
is an example of that, those moments of serendipity that happen all the time in the stream. And waiting
Yeah.
for all of this stuff to happen at a given moment, you know, you'll be there till the cows come home. But if you can find a scene that has that kind of potential, you see the wall, you see the shadow, you go, oh, if someone moves through here, I could probably have something. And then, you make the choices that get you like 90-95% there. And then it's
Mm.
just a moment of
Mm.
waiting and hoping that something pays off, and having the patience to wait there as long as the scene has that potential, and then shooting until the light changes or something about the scene changes where you just, it's gone. Because
Yeah.
one of the frustrating things when I'm working with students is they shoot too little, or they overshoot. It's like, no, no,
Mm.
just be conscious of the potential of the scene and be purposeful about when you're making the shots. Don't just like put it in burst mode and hope that you get something good. That's just not the
Mm.
way to work. You're creating such a hell of a lot of images on your hard drive to have to
Well,
sort through at the end of the
it's hard
day.
to learn what works. Yeah, it's hard to learn what works, and then it's also hard to choose a moment because now you've got 20 moments, and that's difficult to
Oh
work with
yeah.
because it's like, yeah, I think I'm pretty sure most people that had a camera at some point, we all started off shooting in burst mode, thinking that that was the best way to do it, and then you get home and you're like, 30 gigs.
Yeah.
what,
Yeah.
what have I done?
I mean, this
Yeah,
image
you live
with
and you learn.
yeah, I think this image brings. I think this is what um, reminds me of what's missing from the great majority of street photography that I see out there, is that there's no moment
Mm.
there. Yeah, there are
Mm.
people
Hmm.
there. There's great light. There are great elements, all those things, but there's no moment. There's no, like
Mm.
with the shot that we looked before between that couple. That's a moment.
The mo-
This is a
yeah.
moment,
Hmm.
right? And it's not about what's. It's not just about what's in the frame. It's about all those things converging and having some sort of meaning in which you have an emotional, visceral reaction to what you're looking at in the form of a photograph on the screen or in a print. And if you're not conscious of that when you're making the photograph, then it's likely not there unless you got really, really lucky and they only
Mm.
recognize it after the fact. And that's a hard thing to
Yeah, I think
learn.
that's it's a very difficult thing to learn because you have to, and if you're teaching it, you have to teach people patience, and you have to teach them how to be observant towards, you know, like just human interaction. I think you have to almost, in a sense, love to people watch. There's a lot of street photographers that go outside and like it's about lining up the lines and making like really nice compositional, like the
Hmm.
photos are sound. Everything is where it should be. But in terms of paying attention to people, they end up just being an accessory in the photo as opposed to the main portion of the image. And you
So,
can see that immediately.
so how good are you with being patient?
I mean, if a spot looks great, I can sit in a moment for a very long time, and sometimes I'll break my own patterns or my own like standards that I set for. I don't tend to like to ask people for photographs, but if something is just if I see a subject that I think is just great, I'll ask them for the photo just so I can like ease that beast that comes back in later where it's like, why didn't you do that? It's like I don't even want a street portrait of this person, but like I almost have to do it because somebody once said to me, if you, I forgot who it was where I heard this, but they said if you give yourself the excuses to not do something, if you just do it one time and then you do it two times and you do it three times,
Mm.
then you'll keep walking away from images. So I mean, this is only the last couple of months that I was shooting in New York before our current situation, but I made it a point, um, anything that tickled my interest to shoot it. If it was a trash bag, if it was a splash of paint, if it was a fly sitting on a bagel, I told myself you need to stop walking away from moments that interest you
Yeah.
because you're becoming a lazy photographer. You know, you're just hoping and praying that, okay, these things are going to happen. But like walking through the city is a fast paced thing. You get into this habit of speeding through life and you photograph casually, but like sometimes I'm like, I don't really have anywhere to go. Why am I walking so fast?
Yeah, I mean, it's very true. It's like, what kind of habit are you going to develop in yourself? The kind of habit that results in you making photographs, or are you going to nurture habits that just give you a bunch of regrets? Because that's what it
Exactly.
comes down to. Oh, I should have done that. I should have think the damn picture, man. I mean,
Yeah,
even if it's
yeah,
a bad,
do it.
even if it's a bad picture, it's better than a regret.
Mm-hmm. Absolutely. And that regret is just it'll turn you off from shooting for a couple days. I've been there before where I'm
Oh
just like,
man,
why didn't I do that?
I got regrets from 30 years ago,
Yeah.
and they don't involve a woman. It's a damn photograph.
Yeah, well, thank God I have a terrible memory because I'd be up all night.
All right, let's see here. We got okay. Here we have a shot by Karl Edwards. No XF data on this one. So,
Hmm.
thoughts on this one?
Oh boy. Okay. Huh. I mean, I'm trying to. It's definitely an interesting photo. I'm digging the layers in here, but I also feel like this is a little bit too much of a snapshot for me. There's no clear subject or moment here that is fully pulling me in. And I'm not really feeling this hat popping up at the very bottom of the frame.
Yeah,
Uh, it just seems like the photographer wasn't completely in control of this image. Um, I don't see them putting these elements together and working this moment. This feels like he kind of grabbed it and was going through a little bit later and was like, this works. And it does, but I probably would have cropped in and pushed a little bit because everything past this space heater, the space lamp on the left, just past the elf, doesn't really need to be in the frame. It's not
yeah,
really helping at all. Everything above where that child is posing on that background doesn't really need to be in the frame at all. Um, so I probably would have cut this off on the guy in the black jacket and the elf and punched in a little bit and tried to make a little more sense of what's going on here.
yeah. I'll see in the when I edit the video, I'll probably crop in and insert that image so
Mhm.
people can see what you're talking about. But yeah, I agree with you because I think there's the spark, the potential of something here. Yeah, but a lot of that stuff on the periphery really takes away, especially on the left quarter of the image, with a thing I guess is serving as a camera, and then the door frame and all this other stuff in there. But this is sort of um, an interesting shot because it's something that I think a lot of people aspire to in terms of getting a layered image, and
Mhm.
it's
Mhm.
it's not it's not successful for the reasons that you mentioned, but it has the potential of being successful because of like the linkage of the red that happens throughout the
Mhm.
frame. The woman in the red gloved hand to the right of her, the red jacket, the red antlers, the red hat on the person just to the right of the girl. Um, so you have that repetition of red that happens there, uh, but it's just like it's the moment's just not there, right? The
Mhm.
expression of the girl is nice, but it's everything else is not necessarily in sync with what's happening
Mhm.
in that moment, right? And then that's what you that's what I'm often trying to find, is like some synchronicity between elements that have no relation to each other in the real world, but within the context of the frame they do, you know?
Mm.
And I think it's important to see images like that, because it's like it's important to I think too many people just look at one thing. They see, oh, they just see the kid, cute kid, let me make a picture of the
Mhm.
kid, and they're oblivious to everything else, right? And that's why so many pictures are boring. But this kind of goes that under different, slightly different circumstances, this could turn into a really interesting photograph.
Yes, absolutely. And I think maybe 2 seconds before he snapped this, it probably was because you can see this woman in the red hat that's like in the foreground was ducking to get out of the photographer's way.
Hmm.
And that's like everybody's nightmare when you're lining something up and someone notices you and you're like, no,
Yeah,
I was using you as a frame. But it looks like she tried to get out of the way. So maybe this would have, but I still like where she is. I just feel like if we even just cropped in a bit, punched in over the hat, then this could tie in all those elements of red. The person that's kind of hiding half behind that column there would be a little more apparent that they had the red hat on. And we get like, I don't know, it would feel a little bit more dynamic in terms of the angles that it creates. And it would also pull those reds in and isolate so much tan and black happening on the edges of this frame. But I do like what you said about this has like the beginnings of the layers that we all kind of aspire to once we start playing around with layers. You also did a different piece about like what else is in your frame. And I think that's
hmm,
something that a lot of people have to consider when they start cropping their images and working them. And it's like, you know, a lot of these colors around the edges just, they just don't work. You know, if that's something that you care about too, your color work, a lot of things happening around this frame could be
yeah.
taken out and solve that issue pretty easily. Um,
Because
but
so many things here that are relatively fixed, that backdrop, the woman, the woman who's going to be taking pictures. There's going to be a bunch of kids that
Mhm.
are moving into that frame. Um, the walkway, because it seems like the people on the right are the people waiting in a queue to come in.
Mm,
You
is
know,
that what's happening? Yeah, that's like
yeah,
a
I think that's
photo.
what's happening
Yeah.
there. So you could have the opportunity to sort of figure out your position relative to what's playing out. You know, because it might have been interesting had the photographer gotten down between the guy in the jacket and holding the small uh, gloved hand, and use that as a subframe for photographing what was playing out over here. I'm pointing my fingers if anybody can see it. Uh,
Yeah.
you know, you see this here, using this
Slight.
as a subframe for here. It's just an idea to think about. How can you use what is not going to be moving for a little way, for a bit, and use it for the benefit of the shot. Because oftentimes
Yeah.
I even make the mistake of photographing from where I discovered the scene, and it's like that's not necessarily the best position from which to take the photograph. So it's
Hmm.
like, okay, where do I need to put myself so that I get the subject and the background and the stuff on the edges and all that stuff? Because if I get locked into that first moment of discovery and I make the picture from that, and that's the only picture I make, then more than likely I haven't gotten crap.
Yeah, it's interesting you say that. That cement factor where you discovered it, you get that aha moment, and then you feel you need to plant yourself at that discovery point, but that doesn't always help. And as you said before, there's so many elements here that you can use as a subframe. Even this fence, it's odd. This little white fence that's dividing the frame. It's such an interesting element that could have definitely been used to separate, or even use a stronger foreground than the woman that was here.
Yeah,
Just crouching might have given this a better plane, so we could have been eye level with this girl. Maybe she would have caught your attention, and that could have been a nice anchor for the photo. Just somebody's attention towards the photo, connectivity with the lens would have been cool.
yeah. I
But
mean, it's always important to think about. There's always more than one choice, and I think that this image really sort of a testament to that. There's more than just one choice. Doesn't mean that
I have a
any of them
question
are.
for you.
Yeah.
I feel sometimes this is interesting because how do I put this? I feel that the other side of being a good photographer is the, I don't want to say the post processing work, but it's curating your images. I
Hmm.
feel as if some people work the scenes, but oftentimes don't know what a good image is.
Yeah.
And they might choose one of the images that they think were more interesting, but then when you go through, because I've seen photos of that people have taken of shot in a scene, and I've been like, wait, this is fantastic, and they're like, wait, what are you talking about? I'm like, no, this is the moment, like
Yeah.
this is it. And everybody takes bad photos or subpar photos, but it's knowing what elements work in your images. Do you ever feel that way?
Oh yeah. It the way I kind of describe it is that we all have, because we all grow up looking at great photographs, is that we know what a great photograph looks like, but we don't necessarily see those attributes in the images that we make. It's kind of like judging yourself, judging your body, right? You live with your body. So you're looking at all the things that are wrong with it, right? And you could be, and you're focused on the wrong things. You're not looking at the strengths, you know, of what your body offers you. And I think the same thing happens with the photograph. People get so myopic in terms of what they're looking at in a photograph. Oh, is it sharp? Oh, it's nice and sharp. But they're not paying attention to anything else. So I think that people have to sort of learn to have um, that emotional distance to be able to look at their photographs in that way that you're speaking of. And that's why I kind of wait a while before I go through my images. I mean, I got stuff from Japan, and I tried to sit down to start editing that stuff a month later. It was way too soon. I was looking at it and going, "Oh, this is all crap," you know. And rather than making myself suffer, I just said, "Well, just wait. I'll just wait a couple of more months." And about 3 months later, I started
That's
a little bit. I still was feeling that, but I was writing an article, so I had to pull some images from it. So I don't know when I'm going to get back to it to be able to, get down a tight edit of 24 shots, but I think because we get our pictures immediately on that screen, that we don't give ourselves the benefit of that distance to be able to take a step back and look at it as if it's somebody else's photograph.
That's so funny you say that. That's exactly, and that's probably my issue when I came back from Japan. Everybody was like, "Oh, I can't wait. What did you shoot?" And I was just like, "Nothing, absolutely
Yeah.
nothing." I felt like I wasn't myself out there. I was like, I looked at the images and I just nothing. I felt like nothing hit. But I've done the same. I've completely not looked at the images. I put out one video online about what I shot because it was like, "Hey, I'm there. I need to like show that." But I haven't touched those files since, and I keep cracking it open and taking a peek in, and I'm like, not yet.
Yeah, I think sometimes we have to catch up to the photographer that we were,
Mm,
because that happens to me a lot. That after, if I give myself enough time, I'm surprised at how I saw things and the images that I made, and that I wasn't completely conscious of making all of those choices, right? And then when I
yeah,
do, it's like, oh, I am good. I did do a good job.
yeah, yeah,
Um,
yeah.
but if you don't have that distance, man, it's really hard to sort of learn that skill set. And speaking of your photographs, you're Stockezy, and you got to explain that
That
moniker.
is. Oh, Stockezy, you would think it was connected to photographs, but actually a buddy of mine who I photographed with when we were in our 20s, we were starting a clothing line named Stock and Bonds. So it was just like a nickname. He started calling me
Okay.
Stockezy. People called me Stockezy. He was Bonds. And then I bought a camera, and I was like, well, everybody calls me Stockezy at this point. Let me slap it on my Instagram. But
Okay.
actually, Stockezy was around before I had the camera. I had the Instagram account, and then but it works, right?
Yeah, it works. It's easy to remember. I thought you worked at a warehouse or something.
Yeah. Nope, just selling stock prints. That's all.
But so people
Yeah,
can go to Instagram to check you out, but where else can they go? I know you have a YouTube channel.
I have a YouTube channel which is also titled Stockezy. My website is jasonromanphotography.com, and it attempts to be a little bit more professional. But yeah, I try to do a YouTube video at least once every 2 weeks. Sometimes it's once a month or something like that. I try to put out some stuff that I feel is quality and not just kind of put out videos that just show me droning on with my camera. Um, so yeah,
And
that's
you
what I
produce
do.
a good variety of stuff, your portraiture, not just your street stuff. So yeah, you're really well rounded, and I really love um, your aesthetic in terms of how you look at the frame and the use color and black and white. So I always enjoy looking at your photographs.
Appreciate that. That's high praise coming from you. That means a lot to me. I've been listening to your stuff for a long time, so it's great to be here with you.
All right, people. And for people who don't know, this is my podcast, The Candid Frame, which I've been doing since 2006, and it features conversations with photographers from all over the world. My most recent conversation was with Christopher Fernandez. He's out of London, and he began a really interesting personal project during the COVID crisis, in which he photographed people uh, who lived in the apartment opposite his, and he would photograph them through his window from his own apartment and basically art direct them using the phone. It's a fascinating story and a real inspiration when it comes to coming up with personal projects while you're stuck at home. So check it out and all the other interviews. And real quick, there is a contest that I am judging, and let me pull up the link for that. It is Your World Right Now, Light, Shapes, and Moments. This is being done in conjunction with Fujifilm USA, DxO, who produced the Nik collection software, and Viewbug. And you have a chance to win a brand new Fuji X100V and the Nik collection software. And I don't know exactly when the deadline is, but if you follow the links in the notes below or visit the website, you can find out more and submit your images for a chance to win what I think is a great prize. So thanks again for joining me, and I'll see you
Definitely
next
going to
time.
submit.
Yeah, you got to.